Hello, my name is Madeleine Nalder, and I'm going to be taking you through my Assessment 2 literature review, and the case study that I chose was Ben. The overview of the literature analysis will be an introduction, an analysis of the information and research that I found, and an evaluation and recommendations of frameworks and strategies best suited to Ben's school. So first I'm going to look at wellbeing and what is wellbeing. So wellbeing is a positive state experienced by individuals and societies. And really wellbeing encompasses some really key areas, which includes cognitive wellbeing, emotional wellbeing, physical wellbeing, social wellbeing, spiritual wellbeing. And it is really, when it comes to mental health and people looking after themselves, wellbeing really is about that holistic approach to our wellbeing, combining mental health, safe environments, equitable access for people to support people to lead fulfilling lives. Some of the issues that I see from Ben's particular case study at his school is there's insufficient support for families. There's a lack of support for trauma-affected students. There's a socialisation issue, particularly with Ben, and obviously a bullying and peer conflict has become more apparent. So I'm going to look at three different frameworks today. So the Castle framework, the Aspire framework, and the PERMA framework. So the Castle framework is based off 5 key elements. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and that responsible decision making. And I really love this Castle framework because it promotes that social and emotional learning, and it's effective because it includes all key stakeholders. So it's got the child, the classroom, the school, the family, and the communities. And it's really about developing those authentic partnerships and also putting in those practices and policies that need to be put in for a framework to actually have long-term benefits within a school. So I feel the effectiveness of Castle, it supports academic success, enhances that behaviour and wellbeing, and promotes that positive school climate. So some of the literature I found around Castle is the Ross and Tolan one, and that was a study done where they looked at that there was a really strong framework around those 5 elements of Castle, and their findings were that students who were stronger in these skills perform better academically. So it really highlights the importance of that social and emotional learning and those 5 elements to encourage that school success. The next study I looked at was the Dulac study, and that was done with nearly 300,000 students right from kindergarten through to high school. And their findings include improved academic performance, enhanced social and emotional skills. They were better behaved. Okay, but what I found different to Tolan and Dulac was Dulac focused on those long-term benefits. So they were looking at the overall effectiveness of SEL programs, whereas the Ross and Tolan was more about the role of SEL in equity and sort of development. The next framework I'm going to look at is Sue Roffey's Aspire framework. So this is more of a process, not a program. And Roffey develops or places a lot of importance on addressing the how, not just the what. And similar to Castle, it's got those main principles of agency, safety, positivity, inclusion, respect, and equity. One thing I did find though, there was, compared to Castle and PERMA, there was really limited backing from research apart from Sue Roffey's own research. So obviously Sue believes that she's embedding these principles leads to a healthier relationships and reducing behavioural issues and improved academic. But I personally found that there wasn't the backing from other studies, and I feel like schools will be reluctant to put in a framework that doesn't have that peer reviewed and that backing of literature, because you want to know that something works and that it's been proven to work through numerous studies. So the PERMA framework is the third one I'm going to look at, and that was developed by Martin Seligman, a leading psychologist. So again, he's got 5 main elements, and they are positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. So these components he feels work together to help the individuals lead to fulfilling and meaningful lives by fostering that emotional health and that personal growth. So one of the studies I looked at was the Goodman study. And what I found, they obviously looked at those 5 elements of PERMA, but what I found was that from my readings, that the study showed that the 5 elements were moderately correlated with improved social and emotional and academic performance. And I probably found that the framework didn't offer any sort of new insights into social and emotional learning and well-being compared to the traditional methods that we've used before. But it did definitely talk about that broader understanding of well-being. So not just being about particular strategies or this is how you do it, is looking at it like that as a holistic approach. Whereas Seligman's and Diner's models, they were very similar. They both linked to personal strengths, and they do fit with that broader idea that Goodman was talking about. So even though there is some differences, there was also some similarities. So the wellbeing strategies that I looked at that could be put into Ben's school were circle solution, zones of regulation, and restorative practice. So the circle solution sits really well with Sue Roffey's idea of Aspire, and it is all around obviously circle and building that collaboration and active participation in schools and building that respect and I guess responsibility from the students. It really highlights that, though it really relies on teacher buy-in. So if your teacher's not completely drawn into these circle solutions as a strategies, the effectiveness is going to be really downplayed. The next strategy is the zones of regulation, and that was developed by Leah Kuipers. And the aim of it is to assist in developing awareness around emotions and skills for regulation. So it obviously organises our feelings into 4 different zones. But I feel like what comes from the zones of regulation is that ability for us to recognise adults and children where we're sitting, how we're feeling, and what sort of strategies we need to put in place when we're in particular zones. So some literature around the zones of regulation. So Taylor's research indicated that a relationship did exist between self-regulation and that academic achievement. So Kuipers further stated that it also helps that trauma-informed approaches and those positive mental health approaches, which of course is paramount in Ben's case study. The last strategy I'm going to talk about is restorative practice, and I'm really passionate about restorative practice, and I've had a lot of experience with this, and it is about building that positive relationships. I really love that it's about resolving conflict and repairing harm, so it really lends itself to accountability of our actions, and it also provides that open dialogue, which can be also involve parents, staff, and students, so it's a real collaborative approach with dealing with issues. So some of the literature around, so the Darling and Hammond, that analysed data of nearly 500 schools, and that showed there was a reduction in misbehaviour and bullying, a reduction in depressive systems, and therefore improvement of academic performance and improvement of overall school climate. So for Ben, after looking at all the data and Ben's school, I feel CASTLE is the framework that they need. It's clear, structured, provides the school with the tools and strategies to implement into the CEL program. It works across all grade levels. As I've already mentioned, it encompasses the student, the teacher, the classroom, the school, the family, and the communities. And it is important, if there's going to be effective change in the wellbeing area in schools, all stakeholders need to be involved. The wellbeing strategies for Ben, I feel, are restorative practice and zones of regulation. Restorative practice help Ben recognise and repair the harm that is caused. It supports him to own his mistakes and understand how he makes others feel. But I also feel it's important that there's not punitive measures. So he was getting sent to the library a lot. So rather than doing that, let's have a collaborative conversation where we talk about how we will repair it, not just saying you've done this wrong. Okay, let's be a little bit more proactive, particularly with students and with parents. And the last one was the zones of regulation. They are there to help Ben support, identify his feelings and emotions, and give him strategies when he's in those different zones. What can he do if he's in the red zone, does he need a sensory break? Does he need to do finger breathing, mindfulness, meditation, that sort of thing? And it just gives him that knowledge of those different emotions and helps him to then effectively communicate how he's feeling, which I feel will be a proactive approach in dealing with Ben's escalation of his behaviour and those physical outbursts. So in conclusion, with all the literature review that I did, I found that social and emotional learning in primary schools, it presents challenges, yes, but the benefits far outweigh the difficulties. Some of the things that stood out for me, though, were there needs to be a structured and clear approach with the frameworks and the policies from schools. There needs to be genuine buy-in from staff and students. There needs to be staff PD. Staff need to know what they're doing and how to implement it for it to be effective. And there needs to be communication with all stakeholders around the school, so students, staff, parents, and the wider community. Thank you very much for listening.